All right, guys, we're back with another episode of The Endless Endeavor, and today we are going to do another solo cast. So, as you guys know, I like to throw in solo cast every 5 to 10 episodes and just talk about current events, talk about some things that are on my mind, and delve into some things that I don't do as much when I have a guest in the studio. When a guest is in the studio, we like to make it about the guest, right? Now, obviously, I have my homies on and we talk all the shit when I have Tobin and Tyler and whatnot. But sometimes I like to kind of take a deep dive down the things that are currently consuming our culture, um, and then talk about why those things are consuming our culture. Right? I think the conclusion that I'm starting to draw from what I see on my Instagram feed and what I see on the nightly news is really just a lot of political theater. And obviously, you guys know me if you're listening to the show. I lean right, I lean conservative. I think a lot of the stuff that's happening in our country is egregious, and it brings out crazy Anderson sometimes. But the deeper we go down these rabbit holes, it just starts to make me wonder if everything from both sides is political theater, and the stuff that we hear from the right is really just controlled opposition to keep us divided, keep us angry, keep us fighting amongst each other and amongst ourselves, and just really creating an environment that is not conducive to peace and harmony and love and moving this country forward, and all of the things that I think would be pretty unanimous both with the left and the right. Now, with that said, they purposefully do this, and we start to get bent out of shape, and we start to get angry, and it becomes divisive. And now we have people that are forced to have to look at situations or lifestyles or certain ways people choose to conduct themselves, and then we have to attach an opinion on it, right? And that's what's happening with all this transgender stuff. Whereas I honestly think it's such a small amount of the population. It's such a minute part of what encompasses America that you have to draw the conclusion that the fact that this is front and center constantly, it has to simply be a divisive technique. Because how do we allow, or how does it become that the fact that a very, very, very small amount of people, and I mean, I don't know what the numbers are, but I'm sure we can look those up. If you find it on Google, then you know it's factual. But it has to be something, a fraction of a percentage of people probably identify as any type of LGBTQ plus transgender, whatever it is, right? Just a fraction. Yet it has been front and center for the last 24 months on every single thing that we consume. And we're arriving at a point now where it's like that is almost the biggest topic in our country. And I just have to ask myself, that seems fucking silly to me. I'm sure it seems silly to you. How are we arriving at a place as a world superpower that our biggest fixation is where people are putting their dicks at night? And, I'm not going to go down this too hard because I think a lot of us agree and hold the same ideologies on this. Is that I don't think people care like you want to believe they care. I know I don't care, but when it's front and center constantly, then people start to develop a resistance to it. And all of these things that on the surface are about being creating an environment that is celebratory for these people, it's very clear that it's not doing that. It's very clear that it's causing division. And we have to ask ourselves, is that by design? And I'm coming to the conclusion where yes, 100% it is by design. And every single little aspect of our country continues to do that. And it can be any issue that we talk about. And when people are divided on issues or angry or hold fear or resentment for other people's beliefs or other people's views, then that's where we start to see that it's not just a differing opinion, but it's like, it's a conflict. It's an enemy. It's something that we can't just work past because we are fundamentally different than those people. And we're not interested in working past it and working with those people. And if you see that movement specifically, and the only reason I bring that up, it's June. So everything's fucking rainbow flags again. And everybody wants to celebrate all this weird shit. And because it's front and center right now, I bring it up. But if you look at what they're doing, they're pushing an agenda that is so strange to most people, and they expect us to celebrate it, that people are sick of it. And they say, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not down with that. And I'm not impressed by that. And I don't want to celebrate that. And then the long game of this starts to cause resentment. And I think that's probably what's going on by or from the inception of all of this stuff. You know, I had a buddy who's a very successful businessman, and he texted me the other day and he said, you know what, Greg, you got to hand it to these people for being I'm pretty impressed for being such a minute portion of the population. They have really figured out a way to stir things up and cause a lot of ruckus. And I don't know if it is them doing it. I think it's our overlords that are orchestrating everything. And they throw these topics at the American people and keep us consumed by them. So we live in anger and we live in conflict, and we're looking at these groups of people as people to hate and people to just project our anger on. And don't get me wrong, guys, the stuff that I see coming across my screen, it does make me do that. You see these dudes that have come to a conclusion that dancing in bikinis with your bolt-on fake tits and your hairy chest and your banana hammock with your cock fucking just bulging out of it is like in front of children. Yeah, I think that most people whose brains work would agree that shit's pretty egregious, that we probably shouldn't have that in society. But they've given those people a pass because it aggravates the masses. And now it starts to cause that division that we're talking about. You know, if you look at that Gays Against Groomers site on Instagram, more and more people are starting to stand up against this. And I think it's important for people to find common ground and understand that we're being played against each other, and understand that this is a tactic. This is a divide and conquer tactic. And so I'm not going to fucking go off on politics all day today. We're just going to talk about it briefly and going into the show here. But it's something that if you don't think we're being played, take a step back, detach emotionally, and ask ourselves what's really going on here. And I'm to the point now, guys, where, I mean, obviously, I'm going to vote for Trump. I'm going to be very open about that. Everybody knows that. I do like a lot of what RFK says. I do. And I know a lot of you guys are going to be angry when you hear that. It's like, fuck that guy. He's a liberal, and he's a this, and he's a that, and he's a gun grabber. And, you know, I don't know all of the nuances of all of his policies. And so I can't sit here and tell you every aspect of what he believes and if I'm a supporter of those things or not. But what I can tell you as a man and as someone that seems to convey his beliefs in a truthful and digestible manner, he might be someone that brings truth and also brings someone that can throw a wrench into the political system that we have been experiencing for what now? Fucking decades and decades, where the power just bounces back and forth between these two classes of political elite people. And we're just stuck at the bottom, and they promise this or they promise that. And then, you know, taxes get lowered, or depending on who's in power, right? The pendulum swings a little one way with more gun control or less gun control. And it's like, you know what, dude? Fuck all of these people playing this game. That's kind of where I'm at on this. I don't trust any of them. I think they're all in bed together. And I think they don't give a shit about us, the American people. And, you know, everybody's hoping that, at least people of a conservative mindset, people are hoping that Trump gets elected. And this time he drains the swamp and he builds the wall and he does the things that a lot of people believed he was going to do in his first term, and that's going to change the trajectory of this country indefinitely moving forward. And don't get me wrong, guys, if he were to do those things, I think it'd be great, right? But I just don't know how hopeful I am of much changing based on one human being. We've had one human being promising us this and promising us that at every presidential election, every governor's race, every senator, every congressman, all of it, guys. These people stand up there and they say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And you know what? Not much changes. And we have been on a downhill trajectory for 50 years, maybe 75 years. We've been on a downhill trajectory. And this game that we play, these political theater games where the pendulum swings back and forth, doesn't seem to be producing optimal results when you're considering this as a long game. We've talked about it before. The CCP has 1,000-year plans, whereas the American government has 4-year plans on how to simply maintain power and paint the other party out to be worthless, paint their party out to be great. We're going to do all these things. We're going to come and save you. Your life's going to be so much better if you vote us in. And then it's like fucking ping pong with these people. And I'm fucking sick of it. I think you guys have noticed on both the podcast and my social media, I'm kind of sick of it. I'm kind of over it. I haven't been giving it energy. I haven't been being consumed by it. And, like I always say on the podcast, informed but not consumed. And I'm starting to lean more and more towards even less informed, because less informed is less consumed. Now, I know a lot of you guys that are very, very passionate about this stuff, you believe that you have to be connected to this. You have to be dialed in. You have to have your finger on the pulse, because if we don't, what's going to happen? We're going to lose our democracy forever. And you know what? I just don't see that as an option for these people. I see these people pushing us and pushing us and pushing us until probably something catastrophic happens. And then we'll probably have to figure out how to rebuild this nation, or hold those people accountable, or rise from the ashes after they've fucking just completely burned this country in. Now, I know a lot of people will always say, hey, we got to get out ahead of this. We got to stop this before it happens. And I just don't know if we can. And I'm not trying to sound dark. I'm not trying to cause fear, because this episode is going to be about fear, actually. It's going to be about how we need to navigate our lives in the absence of fear, and not allow fear to be things that dictate our decision-making process. And so don't misconstrue what I'm saying as trying to put people in a fearful state. I'm not doing that. I'm just simply saying, if you analyze what's happening in our country, we have so many people that I feel like are, what classes do we want to start dissecting and discussing? The top of the food chain is this elitist class of people that are in the pockets of the big banks and big pharma and all these corporations, and they don't give a shit about you at all. They don't give a shit about your well-being or your family's longevity or your financial stability. They don't care about any of that. I shouldn't say they don't care. They do care. They want to keep you in a permanent middle class. They want to keep you in a position where no matter how hard you work, no matter how much money you save, you continue to become more and more impoverished. So they do care. They just don't care in the capacity that we wished that they would care, and try and see your life prosper and do better and become a better citizen and become someone that contributes and builds a stronger country. We don't see that. What we see is this elite class of people that wants to continually keep people down. And Andy Frisella 101, they want to keep you fat, sick, and stupid. And they're doing it. And the reason that I'm not super hopeful that we're going to change the trajectory of this country is because a lot of you motherfuckers out there have bought off. And when I say that, I'm not talking to Endless Endeavor listeners, because if you're consuming this podcast, there's probably a 100% chance that you haven't had the wool pulled over your eyes, and you aren't one of those people that has just been consuming propaganda to the point where you are now one of those people that is fat, sick, and stupid. When you are fat, sick, and stupid, you are incapable. When you are fat, sick, and stupid, you don't have a vote. But most importantly, when you are fat, sick, and stupid, it is easy for them to keep you in a state of fear. When you are in that state of fear, there's no hope. There's no hope for you. There's no growth. There's no moving past where you're at. Fear is paralyzing. Fear keeps you stuck exactly where you're at. And the reason I want to delve into fear is because this is the state that most Americans are living in. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, we're not living in a state of fear like you're in Berlin during World War II and there's bombing campaigns going on and any moment might be your last, right? That's not the type of fear that we're experiencing as Americans. But what we are experiencing is living in a constant state of what I would call like reduced fear. All right. People are so afraid to stand up for themselves. They're so afraid to say what they're thinking. They're so afraid of any type of conflict. Guys, we see it all the time. We see people like all these little stupid videos going around on the subway or people walking down the street, and you see these things happen like those the new thing in New York is where like homeless fucking drug addicts are just punching random people in the face. And everybody just fucking sits there and takes it. And then like it happens and everybody's in disbelief and nobody does anything and none of the men stand up. Like, our society has just been neutered. It's been neutered. The men are weak and they don't have the courage to stand up and face conflict, both morally or physically. And those are kind of one and the same, right? If you're willing to engage in something physically, then that pretty much says like, hey, this is where I stand morally, and I'm willing to put my physical body as a barrier right here. But not only risk of your physical safety, but a lot of people are afraid to just simply say what the fuck they think. You have fear to say words because this person will think that, or my boss might hear this. And that is shocking to me. And that's kind of why I'm arriving at the conclusion like, well, I'm not super hopeful that suddenly things turn around and everybody's good to go and we find a path out of this mess. You know, when I was a police officer, and I've said this on the show 1,000 times, when I was a police officer, people would say to me when my story went viral and I was getting looked at for termination, I can't tell you how many times I heard, Greg, dude, everything you're saying, like, I agree with you, bro. Like, your message is a good message and everything you say, like, you're right, but we can't say that, dude. We can't do that in uniform. You can't say those things publicly. And then it makes me think, man, fucking police officers are supposed to be some of the most courageous members of our society. We expect police to have the attribute of courage. We expect police to be able to stand up for what they believe morally and ethically. And this isn't a dig at cops. You know, a lot of cops are capable of standing up for what they believe morally and ethically. But during the COVID era, what we saw is a lot aren't as well. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. And I don't even think that makes you a bad person. In my opinion, it makes you a bad cop. Like, dude, if you think that things are being done to our citizens that are egregious and you're not willing to even speak about it, I got to question your capacity to be a fucking law enforcement officer and stand up for your community and the rights of your citizens. But I think a lot of people have just arrived at a point where they go along to get along. and they understand, hey, I feel this way, but I can't express it because of A, B, and C. A, B, and C is usually your mortgage, your retirement, and your benefits. Once they can control your speech by attaching your capacity to have those three things, a lot of people become slaves. A lot of people become slaves, and it is because they are now controlled by fear. You are controlled by the fear of having to what? Having to step out into the unknown and do it again and start over and walk a path that you haven't walked before. And guys, I'm not saying that's not scary. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be or that it's unreasonable that there's an element of fear attached to that. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, it makes perfect sense that there's an element of fear attached to that. But, and this is the caveat, you can't allow that fear to prevent you from making the right decision. And that's what we're seeing with a lot of people. When I was a private in the military, part of the Army values, all right? And when I went through, and I'm sure it's fucking very different now, it was the leadership acronym. And it was loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. Those were the leadership values that they wanted to impart on soldiers. And I am proud of myself to be able to rattle those off. But part of the integrity pillar within that acronym was do the right thing. And integrity is very, very simple. And I think the Army actually nailed it with this one. And they said, when confronted with an option, you always know what the right option is. Just intuitively, you know what is right and what is wrong. Always choose right. And that's a hard thing to argue with, right? It doesn't matter what decision you were confronted with. In your heart, inside your core of who you are, when you were confronted with said decision, you know what is ethically and morally correct and what is not. But very often, we will skirt the edge of what we believe to be ethically or morally correct out of convenience, out of the fear of losing our mortgage, of losing our benefits, of losing our retirement. And then we start to tell ourselves and our loved ones a story to support you making the wrong decision. And you say, oh, well, like this happened with some of my friends that I knew that took the vaccine. Instead of just saying, and listen, guys, if you want to take the vaccine, go take it and go get your myocarditis and then go die suddenly. Like, I don't care. I'm not here to argue. Part of freedom is freedom, right? You want to go, your research is and what you have looked into has led you to this decision, by all means, right? But I'm talking about the people that did the research, that did the reading, that came to the conclusion, and the conclusion was, I don't want that shit in my body. I do not want that stuff in my body. But then you did it anyways. And you did it anyways, and the excuses that I hear coming from people that I care about too. And if you're one of them, and that's why I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, right? But if you say, I do not want to do this, my employer doesn't have the right to tell me that I have to take this experimental medication. But then when they told me they're going to fire me if I don't, well, fuck, man, I got kids. Greg, I got a family. I have these commitments. I have these bills. And now what you have done is you have allowed fear to influence your decision-making process. And you ultimately landed on a decision that you're not proud of. You ultimately landed on a decision that you know is not congruent with what you feel in your heart, but you did it. And you did it because it's convenient. They make it convenient. They manipulate you and they make one path very, very, very convenient. And then they make the other path riddled with fucking hardships. Fauci said it on the, he didn't say it on the stand, but they played it to him. And it was where he said, and I don't know exactly what it was verbatim, but he's like, the people that aren't willing to take the vaccine, well, he said, the people that aren't willing to take the vaccine need to have their lives become very, very difficult. We need to make their lives very hard and difficult for them. And it's like, what? You're saying the quiet part out loud. People that drew a different conclusion than you and all your fucking government crony buddies want to fuck them over and make their life very difficult for them. Motherfucker, you want to make my life difficult? All of our lives are difficult enough. Even in a fucking utopia where the government was doing 100% the correct thing with our taxes, with our military, with our pharmaceutical companies, we could go on and on and on and on and on. Even if the government was doing everything above par and doing it in a manner that we could look at, and they had transparency, they had authenticity, we were able to audit them, we were able to see what's going on behind the scenes, and everything was running as smooth as a government could run, your life's still going to be hard. Your life's still going to be challenging. You're still going to have to fight the battle of physical fitness. You're still going to have to fight the battle of managing your finances. It might be entrepreneurship. It might be building a business. It might be working for a corporation or working for a small business. Like, all of those things come with massive sets of problems and hardships that we constantly have to dissect and figure out solutions to. It doesn't matter how good things are. Life is still going to be hard. So when these motherfuckers then say, let's purposefully and intentionally make it harder, man, you have to ask yourself, just how fucking evil are these people? How fucking evil are they? When their course of action is to make your life miserable because you don't agree with them. Well, I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. The United States was founded on defiance. The United States was founded on saying, fuck the king. I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to have your taxes levied against me. I don't have to pay your fees. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. Fuck you. That's what we were founded on, guys. That's the spirit of defiance that I talk about on this show often. That's the spirit that allowed America to become the country that you're sitting in right now and enjoying all of the aspects of this country that you have been afforded. That's why we have that. We have that because men and women at some point in history said, nah, I'm not down with all of this shit. Fuck you. And guys, I hope that happens again. I think it has to happen again. The reason that I'm not hopeful of us turning this country around right now is because I don't think enough people have arrived at the conclusion that that's probably what it's going to take. I don't think enough people are there. I think the majority of people have their head in the sand. The majority of people have bought off on the propaganda and they allowed themselves to be the useful idiots. And we're mad at each other all the time. To kind of take it back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, the reason I opened up with that is simply for the reason to help you understand big picture that is kind of the foundation of how they're keeping us down, in my opinion. That divide and conquer. Keep us all hating each other, and it's going to be hard for us to ever unify and then create a movement. A movement that is the people against the authoritarian government that is now formed slowly but surely. We don't have the capacity as a nation right now to unify, step up, and throw these motherfuckers out. And I read that little excerpt from the Declaration of Independence, I think a week or two ago on the show, where the Declaration of Independence very, very, very clearly articulates that once government is not serving its people, it is the duty of the people to abolish government. Well, now it's become some sort of crime if you're an advocate of overthrowing the United States government, even though it clearly states in our Declaration of Independence that that is a duty of American citizens. So I'd love to hear the way that they can articulate their way out of that one. But now we've arrived at a place where you can't even talk about it, let alone take any sort of overt action. And so, I think maybe the right answer is simply figuring out a way to dissolve these corrupt parties. Fuck these parties. And fuck the people at the helms of these parties. The Democratic Party is not a representation of America. The Republican Party is not a representation of America. It is these elite motherfuckers at the top that have figured out how to fucking play the game so well that after hundreds of years, they're the only two up there. And they're just playing catch back and forth. And they know it. And that's where you hear the slogan, like it's the right and the left is two wings of the same bird, right? How do we dissolve these parties? And, you're going to have people say like, hey, fucking, you just said you wouldn't vote for RFK, so you're part of the problem. And guys, I might be right? Like I might be part of the problem if I don't think a third party candidate is a viable option. Because in order to dissolve these parties, sooner or later, we're going to have a third party candidate become someone that the American people rally around, right? And guys, I would do that if the Republican nominee was a Mitt Romney or just an absolute fucking a Nikki Haley. I'm not going to play any of that shit. Not interested. I'm not even going to waste my fucking time. But I do think Trump is somebody that has more of a connection to what the American people are hopeful for than most of these motherfuckers. Now, does that mean I think he's the greatest thing in the world? I'm not, the more I delve into the presidential race, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, which I like to be, that's what this show is founded on. I'm starting to like Trump a little less. And the reason that I'm starting to like him a little less is because it seems like every moment that he has in the spotlight, every post he makes, every interview he partakes in, it's just talking mad shit about other people. Talking mad shit. He's talking, and obviously a lot of it's directed at the Biden administration. Guys, fuck, you can pull up probably 100 hours of me talking shit on the Biden administration, right? Like I am not, or I should say I am as guilty of that as anybody, right? But at some point, we have to figure out how to fucking move on and unify people. We have to. We have to do that. And I feel like he's kind of arrived at the point where he's like, hey, you know what? I got the voters that are going to vote for me and fuck everybody else. And I just think that it's a failed leadership opportunity. That's what I think. I think instead of constantly casting stones and talking shit about all the people that we're not maybe aligned with on many of the topics that are hot, that we figure out a way to find some middle ground and to figure out a way to try and actually become better human beings as opposed to constant political drama. And I want him to be better than that. And don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, he's not very presidential and I don't like his verbiage and I don't like it when he uses icky words. Like, I don't give a fuck what he says. I want Andy Frisella to be president one day. And that's going to happen, by the way. I hope after fucking ranting for the last 34 minutes, he could be the guy that unifies. But he ain't presidential at all. You could find fucking 1,000,000 hours of him saying The nastiest fucking shit, right? Because he's real and he says whatever the fuck he wants, whenever he wants to say it. And if you're that type of person, your verbiage isn't very presidential. I'm not looking for presidential verbiage or presidential vocabulary. I'm looking for what I would say is presidential energy. Somebody that simply is here to build people up, be a strong leader, bring people together, push back against the establishment, push back against the elitists, push back against the globalists and the people that want to fucking ruin your lives. Push back against the people that say you'll own nothing and love it. Push back against the people that want to take away your gas stoves and make you drive electric cars. Push back against the people that want to dictate what you put in your body and what you don't put in your body. Push back against the people that want to fill your children's fucking brains with so much propaganda that by the time they're 10, they don't know if they're a little boy or a little girl. I want someone that's going to push back against that while simultaneously standing for good, standing for love, standing for power, standing for empowerment, standing for growing your mind, body, and spirit into someone that is absolutely fucking unfuckwithable. That is what a leader would do. And that's what I'm hopeful that we find in someone. And, you know, like I was talking to Semi Bird about this and he goes, hey, you know, when I'm done doing my time in government service, it's probably going to be your time to step in. And as the saying goes, if you're looking around the room for the person that's going to step up and do the job and you can't find them, it's probably because it's you. And so I'm the first to tell you, I'm not emotionally ready to move into politics. I'm nowhere near that. I hope we have a full collapse of our society before I reach a point where that is something that's a viable option for me. But what I'm thinking is eventually going to happen, and it may be our lives, it might not be our lives, but eventually this unsustainable trajectory is going to implode. We may not have to vote our way out of this. We may not have to find our savior that's going to turn the trajectory of the country around. Both are very possible, right? But the farther we go down these paths and these downward spirals, I just think sooner or later chaos is going to cause some sort of implosion. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. Human beings have been going through the rise and fall of empires since humanity's inception, right? And so if we go through that as a country, that's okay. I actually think that may be what is necessary for so many people's brains that are consumed by all the bullshit. Like I've said it on the show before. I promise you, if you haven't eaten in 3 days and someone calls you a there instead of a Z or whatever the fuck is going on right now, it won't matter to you. It simply will not matter to you because you're going to have things that truly do matter. You're going to have to figure out a way to navigate a world that you are not equipped to navigate. You are going to have to navigate a world that is potentially filled with violence and conflict. It's going to require grit and discipline and defiance. It's going to require courage. And for a lot of people that haven't honed those aspects of who they are to any capacity, it's going to be a very, very rude awakening. It's going to be tough. But for the men and women that have honed their courage and have honed their defiance and have honed their capabilities, for the men and women that have done that, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's going to be manageable because that's what human beings do. They're confronted with problems and then they endure. And that endurance is going to look very different for a lot of people depending on the work that they put in ahead of time. You know, guys, I've said a lot over the last, probably 12 to 18 months that I feel like 2024 is going to be a year where we are faced with some massive adversity. And while I still think that is a possibility, there's also a part of me that feels maybe they're not going to drop the hammer as hard as they originally anticipated. Maybe they're seeing that that option won't be something where they can just come in and take ultimate and absolute control of the country. Because there's a lot of motherfuckers like us out there. A lot. A lot more than they want you to believe. A lot more than the media will let on to. I believe American citizens have more guns than, isn't it the rest of the world combined or some crazy shit like that? I might be wrong on that. Regardless, a lot of guns. And a lot of people that are fed up. And I don't know if them playing that hand right now is going to be beneficial. Because, guys, they turn the grid off. It's on. Right? I mean, it's on. Now, do they want that? I mean, I think if they do that, that could be the beginning of a really powerful and structured resistance pushing back and overthrowing these motherfuckers. I think that could be the very beginning of it. Because now what do you got to lose? Everything is up. Everything that you've earned, everything you've worked for, everything that you've saved for, all those frugal decisions that you made trying to make sure that your family gets set up, or even more importantly, all of those decisions where you didn't choose courage, you chose compliance. Simply to go along to get along because you thought that's what's going to serve your family. Once compliance is off the table, well, all the people that complied, I can promise you there's going to be a percentage of them that are like, okay, fuck this. I tried to play your game. I even bought into your control measures. I did what I was told. I acted how I was supposed to act. And we're still now living in chaos. Well, what next? Well, what next could very likely be a William Wallace figure, inspiring and motivating. I hope the modern day William Wallace is listening, because if you feel that could be you, it could be. It could be me. It could be any of us. All of us hold the power to affect massive, massive change. And I think if they play their cards and create a scenario where massive, massive change is imminent, it might not benefit them. And there's a part of me that thinks they're going to turn the heat down a little bit and just keep it at a simmer and kind of keep people right where they're at. Frustrated, pissed off. A lot of people are pretty broke. You know, a lot of people aren't doing financially great, but they're doing well enough to afford food. You know, most people still have their iPhones. Most people have enough money to put a tank of gas in their car so they can get from point A to point B. Most people still have that. But that's not freedom. Don't misconstrue that for saying people are in a good place. But they're not in a place where they're ready to revolt yet. If they intentionally put us in a place where people will become ready to revolt, then it's very unlikely that, or I should say, then it's very likely that they will do exactly that. And I don't know if they're ready for that. And guys, maybe they are ready for that. I mean, maybe they do want to see the West just eat itself. It's hard to say. It's hard to say what these people would do. But one conclusion that I have come to is that don't put anything past them either. I don't think that they wouldn't do something absolutely heinous and egregious because of the fact that it is heinous and egregious. I think they're not doing those things right now because they're not logistically prepared for it, and they're not logistically prepared for the aftermath. And I think that it could be a long game that could end up fucking them if they were to do something like that. That's why they're not going to do it. Not because they have any morals or ethics or concerned about your well-being, because we all know they don't give a fuck about our well-being. So what does that mean? I've talked for 45 minutes with no clear solutions, right? Because people always say, well, what are we going to do then? What are we going to do? Are we just going to keep waiting and see what happens? Well, probably. Unfortunately, that's probably the answer. Because if you try and get out ahead of this, you want to be the person to start pushing back right now. Good luck. Good luck stopping this machine. I'm not saying that we don't do that ever, but timing is everything. And I think they want us to do that. You know what I'm saying? I think, like, look at January 6th. They want us to push back so they can drop the hammer. And sooner or later, we're going to have to figure out how to push back in a manner in which they can't drop the hammer. And so there's a lot of different ways that this could go. I'm not fucking Nostradamus. I don't have the crystal ball. It's hard to say. But here's what we do know. Regardless of how it goes, what are the things that are going to facilitate success? It's the same shit we talk about almost every single episode. Instead of being fat, weak, and stupid, be strong, be capable, be intelligent. Personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. That's a real thing. We can't discuss this too much, guys, because it's important. Who you are physically, who you are mentally, who you are emotionally, who you are spiritually, it matters. It matters because when it comes time to make those hard decisions, when it comes time to draw those hard lines in the sand, when it comes time to stand up, you can't do it if you haven't started making decisions now that are rooted in courage. You can't do that if the decisions you are making now are all rooted in fear and control. You think you're just going to rise to the occasion one day? They shut the grid off. And now they implement martial law and the streets are fucking chaos. You think that's the day you're going to rise to the occasion? You think that's the day you're going to become capable and fit and be able to fight and be able to carry water for 5 miles? Or drag your buddy? Or carry your kids? That's not the day that you're going to become courageous and capable. That's the day when you are going to fall back on all of the things that you have been putting in the time and the effort and the energy into. If you don't do it now, you won't do it then, because it's going to be even harder to do then than it is right now. It's not hard to get in shape right now. It's not hard to eat good foods right now. It's not hard to put your gi on and do an hour on the mats. Sure, it can be difficult. It can be strenuous. It can give you a little bit of that anxiety. It can be something that you dread. I don't feel like doing that today. But none of it rises to the level of where we would say it's hard. So take advantage of the opportunity we have right now, today, tomorrow. Don't put it off past tomorrow. If something needs to change in your life, why are you putting it off past tomorrow? You know what? Next Monday, I'm gonna tighten my diet up. Motherfucker, it's Tuesday. At least right when I'm recording right now, it's Tuesday the 11th. All right? Monday is a full week away. So you want to continue to put fucking poison in your body and not do anything that's good for you and not read and not do anything that's going to prove to be beneficial. You're going to put that off for a week. Why? Why are you putting that off for a week? Because it's laziness allowing to dictate your decision-making process. Fear and laziness are the two voices in your head that hate you. fear and laziness are those two voices in your head that purposefully and intentionally want to stifle growth. They don't want you to level up. They don't want to see you grow past their control. They want to keep you down and they want to hold you right where you're at. We all have those voices of fear and laziness. They live in our fucking brain. They take up some real estate in there. And even though I've tried to kill those motherfuckers for 30 years, they're still in there. They still have a seat at my table and they still get to voice their opinion almost daily. And I'll tell you the truth. I hope to one day wake up and say I finally killed those voices of fear and laziness. But they're in there. As of now, they're in there. And you've heard me say on the show a lot, I'm not a fearful person because I'm not. I have figured out a way to say no to that voice and stand up against that voice and tell that voice to fuck off. That doesn't mean, however, that that voice doesn't exist. I'm a human being. We all have the dichotomy going on in our head over almost everything, right? But if you feed the fear and the laziness, you allow that to be the stronger voice. You don't stifle the voice of fear and laziness. If you don't do those things, it doesn't get better. It certainly gets worse. And then when you're going to need the voice of discipline and courage, because those are the two things, those are the opposite voices. You have fear and laziness, then you have courage and discipline. Or you could say motivation, but over the last couple of years, everybody says, oh, motivate. Oh, I don't need motivation. You need discipline. Okay, well, to me, that's splitting hairs. One is about getting it done. One is about not doing it. You are not going to empower the voices in your head of courage and discipline by sitting back and waiting. Your voices of courage and discipline are not going to be empowered to the point where they can carry you all of a sudden when you're going to need them to carry you. If you don't start honing that side of you now, it won't happen when you need it. And guys, we haven't made a jiu-jitsu analogy yet, and we're coming up on an hour. So let's make it a jiu-jitsu analogy because every episode requires one. If you went to jiu-jitsu and you rolled around, let's say you're a 2 or 3 month white belt, you got to understand, oh, I know what the guard is. I know what a takedown is. I know what a sweep is. And I know a choke and an arm lock. I know the Americana and I know the rear naked choke. I'm good. And then you just shelved that. You shelved it for 1.5 years. No, let's say you shelved it for 3 years. Long time. A long time to not implement any jiu-jitsu. And then you got in an altercation with someone. It's not going to serve you. It's not going to be available to you. Your default setting is not going to be to out-scramble this motherfucker, take his back, and choke him unconscious. That's not going to be your default setting because you haven't honed your default setting. You have to be consistent. We say it on the show all the time. Consistency is key. And that's why I love jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is a metaphor for your life. If you don't hone your jiu-jitsu blade constantly, it gets dull and rusty, and it happens fast as fuck. Now, I'll say the little caveat here, okay? Because we've actually talked about this in the academy a lot. Taking a break here and there actually strengthens your jiu-jitsu. A lot of times those breaks that you take are not even intentional. Fuck, I tweaked my knee. I got to sit out for 3 weeks. And when you come back, you're like, oh, I'm better. This is nuts. How did I get better sitting on the couch for 3 weeks? Well, the reason that you got better sitting on the couch for 3 weeks is because you have allowed your mind and body to have a rest period, which is good, right? but make sure that your rest periods are paired with long, arduous, hard bouts of training. If you train hard for 6 months and then you take 2 weeks off, with the understanding at the end of the 2 weeks, you're right back on the horse and you're getting after it again, there's no problem with that. Sometimes your brain needs to defrag a little bit. Compartmentalize all the shit that you've been consuming for the last 6 months. That's okay. But the only reason that it works is because you've put the time in, you've put the reps in, you've gained the knowledge, you've gained the skill set, you've gained the understanding over a long, arduous process. And now you can just kind of ruminate on it and let it settle in. And that's what happens when you take a break. But if you haven't put the work in up front, there is no settling in. There is no arriving at a point where you're getting better now as a result of lack of action, as opposed to a result of action. 99% of the time, optimal results come from action. You have to show up. Now, one thing that they're finding that I think is pretty fascinating, I believe it was Andrew Huberman that I heard talking about this, is it's not only the action itself, right? It's the action of partaking in something that the voice in your head is saying, don't do it. That is where the power is derived from. That is where the magic happens. And so if I've gotten in my ice bath every day for the last 6 months, which I haven't, okay, I only take probably a couple a week now just to kind of maintain. But once it becomes a habit, not only a habit, but once it becomes comfortable, once you open the lid to your plunge and you step in, and there's no part of it that's like, fuck, here we go. It's just, you know what? This is part of my routine. I'm going to do my dunk. All right, I'm good. If it becomes part of your routine and your brain doesn't hold a little bit of fear and anxiety for it, you're actually not overcoming and growing like you can when that voice is saying, don't do this, please don't. Oh, I'm doing it anyway, motherfucker. No, don't. Yep, we're going in. And you jump in. That is where the brain grows the most. Pretty fascinating, right? Listening to that there's a part of me that's kind of like, duh, you know, but it's interesting that they've been able to actually put together data and really understand how well that concept of doing things you don't want to do proves beneficial. So guys, we're at an hour already, and this podcast kind of went on its own. It was almost an hour of tangents because all my notes that are in front of me, I didn't even really go through them. We didn't even talk about the stuff that I wanted to talk about in regards to fear. Maybe we'll touch on a couple more things before we wrap it up. But the important thing to understand when overcoming fear is face it often and face it right now. Not tomorrow, not the next day, right now. If you're taking your morning shower, and I do this a lot, guys, I don't take a cold shower every day, but any morning that I say, I'm not in the mood for a cold shower. If that thought goes through my head, instantly the water gets turned to cold. Instantly. Oh, you don't want to feel cold water on your skin, bitch? Boom, right now. Because I can't allow that voice to try and gain traction. Because if I say, hey, I don't feel like being cold today. I don't feel like that cold shower. Just, I'm in a hurry or whatever it may be. So I'm just going to turn the water off and go about my day. There's been plenty of days when I like rinse the fucking soap off and then I just instinctually grab the handle and turn the water off. And I think, ooh, you didn't get yourself today. Just saying that. Just say, oh, you got to pass. Nope. Water goes back on and I'm going to fucking make myself cold. Now that's one reason why I'm such an advocate of cold water, because it's a tool available to everybody right now to fucking work on that inner bitch. That's why I'm such an advocate for it. I don't give a fuck about its anti-inflammatory properties or what it does for my muscles. Like, okay, all that's well and fine, but I like fighting that bitch in my head. So fight it now, today. You want to put something yummy in your mouth because it tastes good? And make the taste buds on your tongue happy, but you're 50 pounds overweight? And what's making your taste buds on your tongue happy is a fucking donut? What are you doing? You know that. And you're choosing convenient and you're choosing laziness because it's hard to eat clean. It's not. Let me reframe that because I just said nothing we're facing is hard. It's not hard to eat clean, but it's challenging. And some people don't want to rise up to the challenge. They want to constantly embrace convenience and they want to constantly embrace that instant gratification. Excuse me. Guys, I haven't had a bite of unhealthy food since May 13th. That's when I started the 7 weeks. May 13th, or 10 weeks rather. 10 weeks of meat and fruit. Start tomorrow. If you're eating bullshit and you know you're eating bullshit, oh, well, Greg, you don't understand. I'm a trucker. I'm always on the road. I work 5/12s. The stores, I work night shift and stores with healthy options aren't open, blah, 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 blah. Just fucking knock it off. Start tomorrow. Start fueling your body with what it deserves to be fueled with tomorrow. Last week's episode was my buddy Jeremy, and when he came up to me, 300 pounds, telling me that he's not making good choices, I said, you need to start tomorrow. And he did. And as we sit here today, he's probably down 20 pounds because he started tomorrow. He didn't put it off. He didn't have a bunch of excuses. He didn't come up with a bunch of reasons why he's not going to show up. You show up, you do the right thing, you put the work in, and the results, here's the beauty. The results also start happening tomorrow. You don't need to wait 10 weeks for your results. 10 weeks, you're going to see a substantial change. Don't get me wrong. 10 weeks, you're going to be a different person. But the results are going to start to show tomorrow. That's why the path and the journey are more important than the destination. You start to stack those little wins. Tomorrow, you're going to feel a little different. In 48 hours, even more different. And then it compounds off of that. It's a simple fucking formula. So we need to do the things tomorrow that are going to serve you when you need that version of yourself to show up when it's game day. When you need that person that's an absolute motherfucker who is not controlled by fear, is not controlled by laziness, is capable, is intelligent, is compassionate, cares about people. All of those things need to be honed right now. You hone those things right now, that's your ace in the hole. You got that. You carry that in your back pocket. And once you carry that in your back pocket, the direction in which the world goes, suddenly not as heavy. The thought of a third world apocalyptic America, it's almost enjoyable. It's like, yeah, I think we do need that. That's probably what we're going to need to change the trajectory of this country. Oh, so when that happens, okay, good. I got it. Again, is that where I want to live? Is that where I want to raise my babies? Is that where I want my daughters to raise their families in a dangerous fucking post-apocalyptic America? Probably not. But like I say in jiu-jitsu, your opponent gets a vote in how this plays out. And in our current conflict, our opponent gets a vote in how this plays out. And you got to find a option that's going to work for you, regardless of the scenario that ends up transpiring. Once you have that, you're pretty much set free. And so with that, guys, I think we're about to wrap it up. I'm looking at the notes here real quick, and I think in a roundabout way, I kind of covered it all. So maybe I did. My notes were in my subconscious, so I was able to go over most of the thoughts that I jotted down without actually looking at them. So it's an hour and 5-minute rant, and it was good, and it was necessary. So I want you guys to go out there, and I want you to commit to a certain amount of time. Don't commit to a day. Don't commit to a week. Commit to an amount of time. And you're going to find that if you commit to courage and discipline, instead of committing, or I should say, allowing fear and laziness to dictate, you're going to grow a level of confidence that you never had before. It's inevitable. Courage and discipline lead to confidence. Fear and laziness lead to compliance. The formula is out there. One is very, very, very hard up front and easier later. The other is very easy up front, but much, much harder later. And that's the beauty in all of this, is that you get to choose your hard. You get to choose how, when, why you face that hard. And I'm an advocate of facing it up front. Get the hard out of the way early. Get the hard out of the way often. Because if you try and just keep pushing the hard up to the back burner and putting it in the back of your thoughts, putting it in the back of your mind, the hard's not going anywhere. And when the universe decides it's time for you to face the hard, you're not going to have any say in it. And it's going to be exponentially harder. That's all I got for today, guys. I appreciate you. I love this journey. I love the endless endeavor. It's been fun. The people I've connected to through this podcast, through Guns and Geese, and most recently Forged Ferocity, are motivating me to choose courage and discipline on a daily basis, more and more and more, because I'm in this with you guys. I share this journey with you. I'm not the guy that sits here and says, oh, go do this, go do that, to simply try and motivate you. I'm also motivating myself. I like being in the trenches. The people that have jumped on board this mission, every single one of them that I've met have been fucking incredible, powerful, inspiring people. And we're just fucking getting started, guys.